Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is Coach Val. Today, we're talking about my favorite topic, which is prevention. Now, specifically, we're talking about cardiovascular disease, so heart disease or stroke. We're talking about ultimately the biggest killer in the country today, even more so than cancer, which is cardiovascular disease. So, I know a lot of people think about strokes and heart attacks and any kind of heart disease as being primarily something in genetics, like, oh, it runs in my family. My dad had high blood pressure, and so he was at more risk for cardiovascular disease. And these are all components, but these are genetic components. And epigenetics, which relates more to your lifestyle and to your exercise and nutrition decisions, like we're going to talk about here in this video. Um, you know, Epigenetics trump genetics for the most part. And if you can live your life right, if you follow these big six pieces of advice that I'm going to give you here, these six main components to healthy living, you're going to be very likely, statistically speaking, to reduce your risk of stroke and heart attack. And this could add many, many years to your life. And not just years, but quality years where you're not medicated and being in and out of the hospital constantly, but where you're comfortable, you're active, and you're enjoying your life. And of course, that's what I want for you. So anyway, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you get more videos like this. I'll have many, many more coming to you soon. And be sure to like the video so that we can get this out to more people as well, and you'll help support the channel. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into it, everybody. Thank you for doing that. Now, I want to give you six main points that are clinically important, that are very well studied for many decades now and from many different research groups. Six main points that equate to reducing your risk for cardiovascular disease, whether it's stroke, heart attack, anything else in that family. The first one I'm going to talk about is exercise prescription. And I've said this a lot before. Exercise prescription does not mean doing a class or a video that wasn't meant for you. I'm talking about specifically whittling down exactly what your exercise prescription should look like based on your current fitness levels, your strengths, your endurances, your heart health, everything, and also based on your medical history, because that'll change things too. People with certain medical histories are going to have different needs now as opposed to people with different medical histories or no real medical history. So there's a couple of important components that go into exercise prescription, but the key takeaway I have for you here is there is a right way to exercise for your body that you can help minimize risk of cardiovascular disease. And that means not training too intensely for too long. It means not training too lightly. It means getting the right frequency, which is usually about 180 to 200 or so minutes per week. More so if you have excess body fat that you have to lose. And getting the right dose of strength training and stress relieving stretching and such as well. All of these things going into an exercise prescription, going into an exercise prescription, have a whole lot to do with whether or not you're going to end up with heart disease one day or not. So that's the first component I want to talk to you about is the exercise science. Now, the devil is also in the details on this next topic, which is nutrition science. This is another one where a lot of people talk about eating clean or just trying to eat generally better foods, but ultimately they're still not getting the protein that they need for better health. They're not getting the dietary fat they need. They're not really balancing their hormones very well. And of course, hormones have a lot to do with your health. We did a video on that recently as well. Um, and then the other thing, of course, is your omega 3 to 6 ratio. It's not enough to just eat generally healthy foods because generally healthy foods could be devoid in omega 3. You can get foods that are often considered healthy that are pretty much all omega 6s. That happens. And then, of course, there's other factors too, like electrolyte balance and their vitamin and mineral content. What I see a lot of times is people gravitate towards a certain kind of food that has great benefits, but that also has some deficits as well. And for example, if you're eating a lot and a lot of fruit, well, that's great in terms of antioxidants and for a lot of other reasons too, but it could also be too much sugar for you, and you're not really getting protein at all in fruit. So, we have to really consider what your meal plan is going to look like to make sure you're checking off all the right boxes in preventing cardiovascular disease. All right, so now let's talk about the environment. Now, this one does not get talked about a lot because people generally assume, in my opinion, that they don't have a lot of say in what goes on in their environment. But I will tell you that in terms of EMFs that come in from cell phone towers and from your phone and Wi-Fi, in terms of EMFs, there's a lot you can do to mitigate or block them. And they can be harmful. We've got plenty of data to support that EMFs might be a lot more harmful than people are realizing right now. Also, there's air quality. And I'll put these two in the same category, even though they're quite different, but they both have to do with your environment. Um, when it comes to air quality, the number of particles that are floating through your air will make a big difference. You're breathing in your air all the time. So if the air is not healthy and you're experiencing that day in and day out, that will certainly be to your detriment in terms of long-term preventive health. So I would suggest looking into potentially blocking EMFs or being in a more EMF-free environment if you're not already. And I would certainly suggest some air purifiers and a measurement tool as well to determine whether your air needs to be cleaner than it already is. So I won't go too much more into detail here, but we can talk more about that one in a future video. Okay, now another topic is hydration. And this is not just the amount of water you're drinking in a day, but also whether the water is clean and healthy. For example, I recommend that my clients stay away from tap water. Tap water has got some pretty harmful properties to it, so I do recommend going for a cleaner water that's not loaded in neurotoxins. So that's our fourth point. Now I've got a couple more for you before we wrap this video up. And frankly, this very next one is probably the most important when you really look at the aggregate of all the data that we have in health science. I don't think anything is quite as important as getting a good night's sleep. Again, I have to clarify though, because the devil is in the details. Most people will figure that if they got 7 or 8 hours and it was fairly uninterrupted, and if they woke up feeling refreshed, that I got a good night's sleep, everything's good. And certainly those are good signs, but in terms of sleep science, if you go deeper into that science, I think you'll find there's a whole lot more to it. I'm going to recommend that you keep the same bedtime every night. And I know that's very difficult, especially if you travel and you're changing time zones, it's virtually impossible. But and certainly on weekends, people want to go out and socialize, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment because that's very important too for your health. But it is important to understand that the closer you keep to a regular bedtime and wake time, the more you can key your body in with nature, with circadian rhythm. And this is a lot more important than you realize because your body's sleep, like sleep time is when you're really restoring everything. Okay, this is when you're building muscle, for example. This is when cellular restoration is happening. And if it's not for good quality sleep, anything can and will go wrong with your body. So when it comes to preventing cardiorespiratory disease of any kind, getting a good solid night's sleep, preferably at the same bedtime and same wake time every day as much as you possibly can, in the right environment with absolutely no light. You want to put some tape over or just not even use that little like a clock radio or something next to your bed or your cell phone. If there's any kind of light, you want zero light in the room where you're sleeping. And that might even mean putting up some big blackout curtains on the window to make sure nothing's creeping in. Now, I'm not saying this because I'm afraid the light's going to wake you up. I realize you can fall asleep with even a TV on in some cases or some kind of light coming in. What I'm saying is that sleep is likely to not be as productive and as beneficial to you. And that if you're doing that night after night, year after year, decade after decade, it's likely to show up in your health outcomes as you get older. And you're more likely to succumb to some form of heart disease if you're not getting really deep, uninterrupted quality sleep every night. All right, on that note, let's talk about kind of an adjacent topic. And this is our final topic for today. And that is stress management. And stress management really goes hand in hand with happiness and having fun. And like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it's really important that you have great relationships and that you're socializing and that you feel good about all the things you're doing every day. Waking up in the morning and your first thought being, yes, I'm going to get a lot done today. I'm going to get a great workout. I'm going to see some friends. I'm going to hang out with my significant other. These are really positive things. I mean, these aren't just good for you emotionally, but they're really good for you physically. And in fact, we've got some studies on isolation, on people who, as they get older, usually are very disconnected to other people, and they're finding more and more time just spent alone, often because of health issues and things that sort of prevent them from really getting out much. And what ends up happening is those people are being likened to, even if they have very healthy physical habits, that emotional distress and that kind of depression and that being withdrawn into themselves is on par with being a smoker. If you can even imagine, I mean, that's literally it carries the same health consequences as being a smoker. And so maybe that sheds a little bit more light onto the question of how is it some people are able to be, smokers and heavy drinkers and overweight and having all these major health risk factors, and yet surprisingly they'll live a really long, nice life where someone else who doesn't do those things might not live quite as long as them. What's that about? Well, I think this sheds some light is that we're seeing more and more in health science and in wellness that so many people are having emotional and stress related problems that are just as devastating to the body as, again, smoking, drinking, being overweight, not exercising, and things like that. So stress management is another very important topic as well. Take time out to have fun, take time out to de-stress, and try to always remember that whatever you're doing, no matter what stresses are weighing down on you, you're only going to make your problems worse if you really internalize them and let them manifest in a physical way, especially. So anyway, guys, lots more to talk about in the future. If you didn't already, please subscribe to the channel. Please click like to help support this video and support the channel as well. Guys, I'm looking forward to your health and your wellness success. Please keep in mind, you can also reach me directly in the description. There's my contact information. Please be in touch. I'd love to chat with you on a more personalized level anytime. Be well.